Welcome on behalf of the American Association for Employment and Education, the membership board of directors, President Derek Jack of Brigham Young University, and the executive director, Deb Snyder. Welcome to the second AAEE Professional Development webinar. My name is Daphne Donaldson, and I serve as a member at large on the board of directors for professional development. I'm excited and honored to present to you today Ms. Allison Brown Lands. She is a professional development specialist with the East Baton Rouge Parish School System in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. She graduated with a BS in economics from Southern University in Baton Rouge. She started her professional career with notable honors from the Boeing Corporation through a scholarship. Allison was awarded a lifelong membership in the Business Honor Society, Beta Gamma Sigma, knowing that education is an essential right and is vital for the economic, social, and cultural development of all societies. She attained her teaching certification and dedicated her professional career, time, and energy to sharing her knowledge and to the students of the Baton Rouge area. She soon was promoted to elementary instructional specialist, where Allison had an immense responsibility and opportunity to guide and help and inspire new teachers. This experience further strengthened her aspirations to promote professional development and the improvement of educational services. As she completes her master's in educational leadership, Ms. Lands continues to assess, design, implement initiatives that are aligned with the urgent challenges focused on creating and sustaining the best learning experiences for all students and teachers. I am so honored again to present to you Ms. Allison Lands.
Thank you so much, Ms. Donaldson, for that introduction and all of your help. And also thank you to Ms. Snyder and Ms. Russell for all of your help and your support. Welcome to Engage, Empower, and Evolve, a guide to project-based learning. The goal of this presentation is to provide strategies on how project-based learning can be utilized to educate and engage our students further, giving them an empowering role in their education. Throughout this presentation, I'll quote from several different resources. The Buck Institute for Education will be mentioned several times, seeing as it has many PBL resources available. Our driving questions are, how do we distinguish the difference between doing projects and project-based learning? Also, what procedures assist in designing and planning meaningful project-based experiences? The agenda will continue to be focused on those two driving questions, but it'll be led by 5 topics that will assist in answering those questions. Those questions are, what is project-based learning? Why should we utilize project-based learning? And then how do we design a project-based learning experience effectively? And then going even further and saying, well, is your district ready for project-based learning? One thing to keep in mind as we begin this presentation is that we all may be coming from differing roles that we play in the PBL implementation process. We have different questions in mind, but the content of this presentation and the things that we discuss today will hopefully be relevant to all and have a focus on all of our ultimate goals, which is to better prepare our students. So let's get started with our first topic. What is project-based learning? Let's all think back to our own classroom experiences. Although we had some great teachers, many of our experiences included sitting at a desk, looking forward at the teacher as she presented all of this great information, and then on Friday you took a test on the material. Or maybe it was at the end of a unit and time to create a project or time for a big social studies fair. Let's keep those things in mind as we watch this clip and see if this situation looks familiar to you.
Honey, what are you doing? We gotta go?
It's dressed like a President Day and it's supposed to be Martin Van Buren.
Who?
Martin Van Buren.
Google. Martin Van Buren.
Although it looked entertaining, I seriously doubt that the student in the previous video really learned anything from that experience. Unfortunately, that is also reflective of some of the experiences our students participate in their classrooms. But as grown-ups, we know that's not the world that we live in. We live in a world of inquiry-based projects, whether it is a home project that we're participating in, a wedding, a work assignment. We live in a world filled with projects that require planning, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and expertise. Let's take a look at this example that really exhibits how much we live in a project-based world.
Meet Claire. She was recently presented with a challenge. Her company, Super Suds, makes soap, and it was up to her to find the most earth-friendly way to produce it in the future. Her boss gave her a budget and a few requirements, and it was up to her to come up with a solution. She organized and managed a team who researched the options and created materials summarizing the issues. Claire's team asked for feedback and presented their findings to the boss. Claire came out of the project looking like a rock star, and she learned a lot about green products. If you look closely, Claire's success involved critical thinking, collaboration, and communication, things that aren't often taught in traditional classrooms.
So if the world needs more Claires like in the previous video that have the ability to think critically, communicate effectively, and work with others to achieve a common goal, why wouldn't our classroom experiences look that way? And one of the solutions could definitely be project-based learning. Project-based learning is a mixture of authentic, engaging, complex classroom experiences. It's the act of students learning through identifying a real-world problem and developing its solutions, still while focusing on the necessary content. One of our teachers' biggest fears is that they may have to stop instruction and say, okay, it's time for project-based learning, but it's quite the opposite. PBL does not replace your content and learning objectives. It serves as an engaging, student-friendly, real-world vehicle in which to communicate your content. Of course, traditional instruction is still necessary, but by also providing students with a real-world problem to solve that applies to the content and engages them, you allow those students to apply their collaborative skills to practical research and resource gathering. They also have an opportunity to use critical thinking and more. To further reiterate the significance of project-based learning, an author named Tony Wagner of the book Creating Innovators compared project-based learning to a filling main course. It stated that PBL is rich with content knowledge and the use of 21st century skills. This strongly supports that in the 21st century, what you know is far less important than what you can do with what you know. That's where PBL really comes in and assists. So for now, we can check off that we have covered what project-based learning is. It's an engaging, real-world learning experience that can be used to support and teach content and build 21st century skills. So now let's talk about why we should use project-based learning. We'll begin with a quick little video clip to get started on why we should utilize project-based learning. So why did more people want to take the stairs? Because it was interesting, it was fun, it was engaging. Even though the stairs may have taken more effort to climb, the added elements kept the people who were participating interested in the task. And the same can be said for project-based learning. Let's talk about some more reasons why we should utilize project-based learning. It makes school, as we said, more engaging for students. Today's students, more than ever, often find school sometimes to be boring and meaningless. What PBL provides is an active, not passive, learning experience. A project engages their hearts and their minds and provides real-world relevance for their learning. PBL improves learning. After completing a project, students understand content more deeply because you've utilized the PBL to drive the content and engage them at the same time. PBL experiences allow students to better apply what they know and can do that in different situations as well. Project-based learning builds success skills for college, career, and life, directly related to what we talked about with the 21st century student or the 21st century workplace or in college. Success requires there more than just basic knowledge and skills. With project-based learning, students learn how to take the initiative and have self-responsibility. It also builds their confidence, gives them an opportunity to practice solving problems, to work in teams, communicate ideas, and manage themselves more effectively. Project-based learning helps address standards, content, and learning objectives. Project-based learning also provides opportunities for students to use technology. Students are very familiar with and enjoy using a variety of technology tools. These things are perfect fit for project-based learning. With technology, the teachers and the students can not only find resources and information, but it gives them an opportunity to collaborate effectively, not just with the people within their classroom, but through experts and partners and audiences around the world. Project-based learning makes teaching more enjoyable and rewarding for the teacher. This allows the teacher to really work closely with active, engaged students doing this high-quality, meaningful work. Project-based learning also connects students in schools with communities and the real world. That's a part of definitely what makes it engaging and it's meaningful to them. It provides them with these empowering opportunities to make a difference by solving these real-world problems and addressing these real issues that could even affect their own communities. We should be preparing our young people for innovation and complexity by creating these project-based learning opportunities for them to experience. These can also lead to success in later on in life in leading projects independently and working with diverse teams. It also addresses facing big challenges and then at the end of it all producing high-quality public products. Now that we've discussed the what and the why of project-based learning, let's talk about how to implement its teaching practices. How to help teachers do project-based learning well, the Buck Institute for Education that I discussed before created a comprehensive research-based model for project-based learning, which they call the gold standard. The gold standard has three parts. In the middle, it has the student learning in the center of the diagram in yellow. And then in red, it has the essential project design elements. There's also another component to that as well that we'll discuss later on in the presentation with the project-based learning teaching practices. You can think of it all as working with backwards design, where you identify the desired results, you determine how you're going to check what the students have learned, and then you plan the learning experiences and instruction. So learning more about this gold standard could definitely help learning how to design and implement project-based learning. So let's take a look at those first, those student learning goals. The student learning of academic content and skill development are at the center of a well-designed project-based learning project. Like the lens of a camera, this diagram puts the focus of PBL on preparing students for successful school life and experiences. With the key knowledge and understanding, that is the piece where it talks about the important content standards, the concepts, and the in-depth learning understandings that are really fundamental to school subject areas and academic disciplines. And then when we start talking about the key success skills, that's going back to those 21st century skills and the college and career readiness skills that we discussed. So that just reminds us that that is the focus of everything. That is the focus of the design. Now looking closer at the project design elements, it's just really letting us know, so what goes into a successful project, a successful project-based learning design. First, you have the challenging problem or the question. That is definitely the heart of the project. It's what it's about. If you were to sum it up, it's basically a problem that the students will investigate and solve. Most times this question or this driving question, of course, it's a real-world situation, but in most times the most effective is an open-ended question where the answers and the solutions can be unique. I created this driving question chart derived from a resource with the Buck Institute of Learning. But what this allows is the teacher and the students to practice writing driving questions by framing initial words, entities, actions, and the audience or purpose. All of these things are essential to creating an effective project-based learning, real-world driving question or challenging question. Here's an example as well from the website, the BIE website, of a completed project plan, but the focus is here on the driving question. It says, how do other regions in the United States influence my life? That question is definitely fulfilling all of the components of what a good driving question looks like. It's real world, it shows who it affects, and then it shows what actions as well throughout the plan can be done. The next part is sustained inquiry. Let's watch this sustained inquiry in action during an actual PBL experience.
Textbooks your way that'll help to go over all the different body systems that'll help to get some answers to the questions that I'm stumped on. So textbooks is one answer. The internet, we're Googling, of course, and looking up some answers on the internet. And then we go to conferences a lot and travel across the country to get folks that help teach us about different body systems and to answer the questions that we have for ourselves. That's a great question. Thank you. Well, I look very forward to having you meet my patients and learn what their problems are, and look forward to having you all do your homework and do some research and get some answers for me, okay?
As you can see from the video, the inquiry process here, it was more than just looking something up in a book or online. This project in particular incorporated different information sources. In particular here, an expert. They had a whole class being able to participate in an interview with an expert, and that is definitely a big piece of project-based learning, using outside experts as a resource, whether it is an actual face-to-face interview, whether or not it may use technology and Skype, just ensuring that the students know that this process goes beyond the classroom. Including that interview with the expert in that field truly provided a meaningful context, a real-world component, and allowed those students to see how their experience connects with real-life concerns. The next is authenticity. When people say something is authentic, they generally mean it's real or it's genuine, not fake. Here in education, the concept has to do with how real-world the learning task is. A project can have personal authenticity. It could relate to the community, but it's all about speaking to the students' own concerns, it's their interests, their cultures, identities, and issues in their lives. The next is student voice and choice. Having a say in a project, especially just thinking from an adult perspective in our fields, that creates a sense of ownership in us, and that could be the same for in students. They care more about the project and the work, and they work harder if they know that they have a sense of ownership in it. If students aren't able to use their judgment when solving these problems and answering their driving question, the project just feels like doing an exercise or following a set of directions. They have to have some input and control over the aspects of the project, even from the questions that they generate. The next is reflection. Throughout the project, students and the teachers should reflect on what they're learning, how they're learning, and while they're learning, early in the project, during the project, at the end of the project, throughout every phase. There are different ways to reflect and evaluate the effectiveness of the project. I listed here some different examples, but the key thing is ensuring that the reflection process is there and they're able to look at their own work or look at the work of another student and really reflect on the experience. Critique and revision is another essential project design element. When we're working with the critique process, something that is very important, like you could even call it a critique protocol. There are 3 different norms to that: to be kind, to be specific, and to be helpful. I love the video that I'm about to play. It's called Austin's Butterfly. Some of us may have seen that video before, but it really shows these critique norms and that protocol and process where the teacher and even the students are being kind. They're specific about the different things that they see that may need to be changed. They're definitely helpful. The students are there analyzing the work. It's not just the instructor. And the students choose what work needs to be shown and what work needs to be critiqued and what the focus of that critique is. Let's take a look at Austin's Butterfly to look at those critique norms.
What would you guys say to teachers if they're not getting high-quality work? Could they learn something from this, and what would you say to them that they could do differently in their class?
This is a story called Austin's Butterfly, and it's a true story about a first-grade boy, and his name is Austin, and he goes to school, or he used to go to school, in a town called Boise, Idaho. And in his class in Boise, Idaho, they were studying butterflies, and he had to do a project. His job in first grade was to draw a butterfly, and this is the butterfly that he picked. Austin had to use this photograph as his model, and he had to draw an accurate scientific drawing of this butterfly. This is called a tiger swallowtail.
I knew it.
Can you tell, Toby, why it's called tiger?
Because it kind of has the stripes of the tiger right there.
Good. So here was Austin's job. He was supposed to do a scientific drawing of that butterfly. But remember, Austin was only in first grade. And you know what he did? He forgot to look like a scientist carefully. He got his paper and he just started to draw the image of a butterfly that he had in his head. And he wasn't looking like a scientist, and so this is what he drew.
Whoa.
It's not bad, and it is a butterfly, but does it look exactly like this? No, it doesn't yet. It doesn't look exactly like this yet. Luckily, this wasn't a regular school where Austin went. It was an expeditionary learning school, just like Presumpscott School. And so they didn't look at this and say, good, Austin, you're done. They said, Austin, good start. Now we can start giving you critique so you can do a second draft and make it better, and a third draft and make it better, and you can make it much, much closer to this. And he was ready to go. All of the first graders in his critique group sat on the floor like you guys are, and they decided to split their advice into 2 kinds. First, just the shape of the wings. And then when the shape was right, they'd give him advice about the pattern inside the wings. Alia, what would you say?
You can make it much pointier.
Good. These wings could be much pointier. Who else would add something? Attack, what would you say?
About the angle, because not to be mean about the angle, it's just not exact. So
okay, so show me. Come on up here, Attack. Show me what you would ask him to do slightly differently.
Like to make it a little longer.
Longer where? Draw where you would do it.
Right there.
Okay, so pull this out longer.
Yeah.
That's very specific, Attack. Thank you. Jamila, what would you say?
It's like angle.
Good. Jamila, I love that. So you're saying more like a triangle shape. And I agree. Well, you know what? Those first graders came up with most of those same ideas. And you know what Austin said? He said, okay, I'll go try. And he went back to his seat and he drew this. Does this look more like a triangle? Yeah. Did he go out further, like a talk was suggesting?
Yeah.
Did he add some jaggedness here?
Yes.
Like Cindy? Did he get rid of that bottom thing?
Yes.
So he did listen to his friends, and he made it better. It's not perfect. Toby, what would you say?
I'd say don't put those little tail things so pointed in. I'd say put them more pointed down.
Good. Okay, and Ethan, what would you say?
I think you should make the leaves like this, not like this.
Okay, he listened to his friends, and they said, this is really a lot better, Austin. That second draft really is better.
Yeah, maybe you can make a third one.
Good. Maybe he could make a third draft. And so he did this draft.
That's the third draft.
That's his third draft, Hadley. That's just right. Elijah, what do you notice there?
Well, one plane's more pointed than the other, and that side is a little bit higher than the other.
Good. Coburn?
Right here, it doesn't have the inside thing still.
Ah, okay. Needs a little bit more of that notch. So, do you think maybe he should do a fourth draft?
Yeah.
Well, that's just what he said. He said, shoot, okay, I got round again. I'll go back and do a fourth draft. He listened. Does it look more even like Elijah was suggesting?
Yes.
Yeah, and does it look like...
High-quality work is definitely a hallmark of project-based learning, and it's attained through thoughtful critique and revision. In this case, students should be taught how to give and receive constructive peer feedback. This definitely improves the project processes and products. For example, with the story of Austin's butterfly. These things in project-based learning should also be guided by rubrics, by models, and formal feedback and critique protocols. This also means for the teacher, it's not just the teacher giving feedback to students, but students must learn how to evaluate the results of their learning in a kind, specific, and helpful way. The last essential project design element is the public product. The product, in this case, students make their public product by explaining, displaying, and presenting it to people beyond the classroom. Think of what often happens when students make presentations just to their classmates and to their teacher. They may not care as much about the quality of their work, but when students have to present or display this work to an audience beyond the classroom, the performance bar raises. Of course, no one wants to look bad in public, so there's a certain degree, a certain performance bar there. Students are held to a higher standard. Feedback is usually positive, and like we said, the work students have done becomes more meaningful and real world when it's a public product. Whatever form a project-based learning experience takes, it must have those essential elements. BIE has provided for us several different resources to assist in that process, including this essential elements checklist, so you can ensure that you have covered all of the design elements. They also have a project design rubric to follow. They have a project calendar, a project design overview, and one of the most outstanding resources that they have available is a library full of project-based learning experiences varying through multiple subject areas and grade levels, and all of this is available through BIE.org. So we've discussed the what, the why, and the how of project-based learning. The question is your school site or your district ready to implement this teaching method? And we're going to talk about the deep changes needed for effective PBL implementation. When transitioning to PBL, one of the biggest hurdles for many teachers is the need to give up some degree of control over the classroom and trust in their students. But even though their more often seen as here with project-based learning as the guide on the side rather than the sage on the stage. This certainly doesn't mean that teachers don't teach in a PBL classroom. Many traditional practices remain, but they're reframed in the context of the project. And that's going to lead us to discuss the project-based teaching practices gold standard, the one that we looked at previously. Still, the key knowledge and understanding and success skills are there as the focus of this design. It goes through different teaching practices that are effective and essential as well. First, to design and plan, teachers must create or adapt a project to fit their standards and plan its implementation from the beginning to the end, from the launch to the culmination, still, as we discussed before, allowing some student voice and choice, but designing and planning is quite essential. Aligning to the standards. Teachers use standards to plan the project and then make sure it addresses all the key knowledge and understanding from the subject areas that are included. Ensuring that you build the culture. The teachers are responsible for promoting student independence and growth, this open-minded inquiry that we've been discussing, team spirit, and even attention to detail and quality. Teachers work with students when managing activities to organize the tasks and the schedules and set different checkpoints and deadlines. What's very important as well is scaffolding student learning. They can employ, in this case, a variety of lessons and tools and instructional strategies that can support all students to reach a common goal. What's also important is assessing student learning. Teachers use formative and summative assessments with project-based learning to ensure that the key knowledge, the understanding, the success skills are there. Also, engaging and coaching. Teachers engage in learning, and they create alongside the students and help identify when there may be need for skill building with the content, some redirection, encouragement, and especially celebration. So this is another piece of the gold standard with the actual teaching practices. So let's talk about, well, what things would need to change in order to start implementing a project-based learning experience. First, there has to be a fundamental and deep change regarding what teaching and learning looks like. At a school level, this can mean it can no longer be seen as just imparting knowledge or subjecting students to learning treatments. Learning is no longer going to be viewed as something to which students have done to them. Instead, teaching here is more about coaching and guiding and personalized learning experiences. There also has to be a deep and fundamental change in the role of the teacher. Teachers can't just see themselves as the imparters of the knowledge. They have to take on the role of facilitators of learning. They give up the role of chief information officer, so to say, in their subject areas. And with that, what could also be very important is professional development for teachers. One of the most important aspects of successful PBL implementation is job-embedded professional development for teachers. These teachers have to receive training on how to design quality PBL, create strategies and environments that are conducive to the process. Some other things that can assist in effective PBL implementation. It's the way classrooms are designed and laid out. These classroom environments have to make way and space for students being able to communicate with each other. The classroom requires definitely flexibility, and it has to be set up for collaboration purposes. Also, the concept of using mostly seat work, it just has to be abandoned. Project-based learning requires students to move about sometimes the entire campus and beyond. These students need to be able to go around the classroom to different students, to the schoolyard for different purposes. which could definitely make PBL effective. The whole idea between, again, seat time or blocks of time per subject must be modified. Project-based learning covers a variety of subjects at one time, so it's engaging in learning, and it's not just a discrete amount of time for a certain subject. So it's different things, different subjects implemented at one time. School operations and procedures and rules in some cases may have to be modified and re-examined. PBL can be messy, it can be chaotic, and instead of just requiring students to sit in their desk and make sure that they sit quietly, they have to have opportunities to communicate, of course in a structured, manageable way, but these students have to be allowed to communicate. Efforts must be made to demolish traditional boundaries of subjects and grade levels, and that's what we discussed before with the variety of subjects that one PBL project can cover. The idea of having one set schedule for all students also needs to be reconsidered. Schedules have to be modified to allow for learning to extend sometimes beyond the classroom walls, and that could include more than just taking a field trip. Taking a field trip could be an essential piece of a project-based learning experience. But really just looking back at the whole idea of these static schedules, it needs to be re-examined. Administrators must be more tolerant and willing to encourage risk-taking. Administrators in these PBL schools, they have to change their desire to control what is essentially a very messy learning model here with project-based learning, yet still maintain, of course, safety and operational effectiveness. They have to, they sometimes try to exert too much control over the situation where they have to be, again, willing to allow teachers to experiment and explore just like the students will. Teachers must move to collaborative learning environments as well. Assist in, of course, learning more about these particular project-based learning. You can definitely learn from your fellow teachers. Professional development in PBL is not a one-time sit-and-get endeavor. It has to be job-embedded, consistent, and it has to happen often. Teachers should know that administrators have their backs when developing project-based learning experiences, and that they will not be judged throughout the process. This process has to allow teachers to have the flexibility in their schedule to try PBL and create a school-wide shift in scheduling, to organize conversations with teachers or even with different community leaders as well. Support frequent student and teacher public presentations, publications, and celebrate teacher PBL successes and failures. And definitely modeling PBL for staff during meetings, trainings, and events. So we've talked about what project-based learning is. We've talked about the why of project-based learning. We looked at how to design these project-based learning experiences utilizing those gold standards, and then talked about some changes that would be effective for PBL implementation as well. So now let's look at our two focus questions that we had, our two driving questions, and see if the content that we covered definitely fulfilled its purpose. The first one was, how do we distinguish the difference between doing projects and project-based learning? And as we discussed, PBL is student-driven, it's inquiry-based, it's complex, it's rigorous. It's much different from projects that may be teacher-directed and fact-driven. So what procedures assist in designing and planning these meaningful project-based experiences? These are some different things that we discussed. One thing that's very important is teacher professional development to assist teachers in transforming their classrooms into these project-based learning experiences. Several types of professional development are necessary. This could include practicing writing these essential questions and creating these tasks, designing these rigorous technology-infused lessons, creating the appropriate calendar, appropriate formative assessments that are necessary, and then moving from just being the sage on the stage and really stepping back and being the facilitator of the process. One of the challenges of PBL, but also one of the joys, is the planning process. It's something that's very essential. In project-based learning, you plan up front. By using the backwards design that we discussed briefly, you can effectively map out a project that's ready to go in the classroom. Once you plan it, you're able to differentiate instruction and then also meet the needs of your students. Thankfully, as we discussed, there are many planning resources available to assist in the process. So this was Engage, Empower, and Evolve, a guide to project-based learning. My name is Allison Lands. If you have any questions, if you have any input to add to, if you want to discuss how well project-based learning has worked at your site, what other things could you do, what next steps, you're free to email me or call me. My information is there. And thank you so much for listening and for participating. Thank you all so much.